Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Kara, and in today's video I'm going to be reviewing all of the books that I read in 2023, and I snuck in a few from 2022 since I only read, I want to say, like 5 books from that year. But I have quite a few to go through. Let me try to pick these up and show you. Ugh, jeez. I literally have this many books. This is crazy. So yeah, I actually read that many books over the past couple years, and then in addition to that I even have these two, which are more like textbook size and style books. But I have a lot to go through. Before I dive in, I'll quickly add that if you guys have a Goodreads account and you want to follow me on there, I'll leave my profile linked in the description box down below. Basically, you can just see books that I've read in the past, how I rated them, what I'm currently reading, and books that I want to buy in the future, things like that. So if you have a Goodreads, definitely go and follow me. I'll leave that linked in the description box. The first book on the list is The Magician's Nephew, and this is by C.S. Lewis, and it's part of the Chronicles of Narnia series. Believe it or not, I have actually never read the entire series all the way through. So this one I rated 4 out of 5, really did enjoy it. I really enjoyed too that there were different drawings. So like you can see here, there's like the drawing of the lion, and honestly that's just like throughout the book. Of course it is more of like a kid's series. Here's another one. Just like really cute drawings. So it is more of a kid book, as you can see, very, very tiny, but I did enjoy it. 4 out of 5 for this one. Next up, I have Herbs for Health and Healing, a drug-free guide to prevention and cure by Kathy Kevel. This book is not typically one that you would read from like cover to cover, but I did. I'm just super into holistic remedies and just a more natural way of healing your body than conventional medicine. And I just love the way that this book is laid out. Basically, they separate it into different chapters that are easy to reference for whenever you need something. So if you're dealing with like a cut or a mosquito bite or anxiety or a headache or anything like that, you can easily go to that section of the book and find the remedy for it. So like an example of some of the chapters are the brain and central nervous system, the heart and circulatory system, digestive system, respiratory tract, the skin, just a bunch of different things. And she includes recipes to make your own tinctures and remedies, but also goes through history of holistic remedies and her experience helping people, and I just really enjoyed it. So really great reference book. I have used this a few times since reading it for different ailments and things. Really do recommend this one. 5 out of 5. Next up is the book on estimating rehab costs, The Investor's Guide to Defining Your Renovation Plan, Building Your Budget, and Knowing Exactly How Much It All Costs. This was written by J. Scott, and honestly, this book is the revised version written in 2019, or at least revised in 2019. And I really do enjoy this book. I rate it 4 out of 5. The reason it's not 5 out of 5 is just because the costs at this point are outdated. So that part of the book isn't exactly relevant anymore. However, I do still think that it's a really good book to have on hand. And the reason is because I love how it's laid out. So as you can see, it's not very thick at all, but his chapters will be things like roof, gutters, siding, exterior paint, decks, concrete, garage, landscaping, septic system, foundation. And in each chapter, let me just pull up one here. So like this is the chapter on concrete. He'll go through an overview, and then he goes through different inspection tips, life expectancy, costs, and basically what's considered a large project, a small project. But I feel like just the inspection tips and life expectancy information in here is really crucial. And I think even if you're not an investor, you're not a flipper or anything like that, if you are just a homeowner and you want to do some of your own renovations, I think this would be a great book. So I do recommend this one. Next up is probably the most popular book in the Chronicles of Narnia series, and that is The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, again by C.S. Lewis. This is the second book in the series, And honestly, I enjoyed it just as much as the first one. This one's very action-packed. Again, this one had drawings as well. Really easy to follow along, probably since it is like a kid's book. But I did enjoy it, and for whatever reason, I didn't read any more of the books in this series. I do have them on my bookshelf. They're up here kind of out of frame. But I do plan to read the rest of them, and I think that they'll probably be just as good as the first two. So if you guys have read the books in this series, let me know what your favorite one was. But this one, just as good as the first one, 4 out of 5. Next up, we have The 7 Levels of Communication by Michael Mayer. I rated this one 4 out of 5 on Goodreads, but honestly, I feel like a lot of the information didn't really stick with me. I remember the premise of the book was that it was basically a realtor who didn't really have a thriving or growing business. He was just kind of stagnating. And he went out to lunch with someone who ended up becoming his mentor. He went to some speaker events and just learned a lot of information from that person on how to grow his business. And I remember liking that it was more of like a storyline instead of just telling you like bullet point facts of what to do. I feel like it was more of an enjoyable read, and it therefore didn't feel as businessy of a book. But basically this is what the book is based off of. So this is the communication pyramid, and basically just stating that these are the different ways that you can communicate with people, and ultimately kind of how frequently you should be doing those things. Ultimately, I did enjoy it, and it might be worth rereading. It has been over a year since I read it, so the fact that I don't remember a lot isn't too crazy. Next, we have 13 Reasons Why, and this is by Jay Asher. I think that this was turned into a Netflix show or a movie, something like that. You guys have probably heard of this one before, but in case you're not aware, it's basically about a girl who commits suicide, and before she did that, she recorded different tapes that ultimately get passed to different people around the school and inform them of how they played a role in her suicide. It sounds like probably the most depressing book you can think of, and I went into it expecting to be super depressed, but somehow the author makes it a little bit more lighthearted. Of course, the premise of the book is very sad and very depressing, but he makes it a little bit more lighthearted, and there are even some comedic points in the book. I really did enjoy the writing style. It was a very quick and easy read. I really found myself getting into the book and looking forward to reading it. So this one I do rate 4 out of 5. Next up, we have the final book that I read in 2022, and that is The Purpose-Driven Life by Rick Warren. What on earth am I here for? If you're not familiar with this one, it is a very popular book, and it's more of a religious book. So it's written by, I believe, someone that is a pastor, I want to say. And basically there are different Bible verses in here and references as to what our purpose is on earth from a more religious perspective. I personally am not like overly religious. I wasn't sure if I would really enjoy this book. I don't typically tend to pick up more religious texts, but I actually really liked this one. I really enjoyed his writing style, and I feel like it was very easy to read, very easy to understand. He made a lot of really good points, and I enjoyed it. I can see why a lot of people really did enjoy this one. So easy 4 out of 5 for this. All right, we are done with the books that I read in 2022. Let's dive in now to what I read in 2023. The first book I read in 2023 was All the Light We Cannot See by Anthony Doerr. I'm not sure how you pronounce his name. This is actually a Pulitzer Prize winning book. It's a pretty chunky one too. And honestly, I hated this book. This was horrible. I really didn't like it. I ended up rating it like 2 out of 5 on Goodreads. I'm not totally sure why I didn't just give it 1 star. I think it's because some of his descriptions of the landscape were pretty good. But honestly, I hated this book. I have thought about this book ever since I first read it in the new year and just thought, I can't believe I wasted my time reading this piece of crap, to be honest. If you don't like this book, I'm not even sorry. I hated this. I hated this book. I'm gonna read my review of this. I said, I have a lot to say about this book. First of all, I do not understand the high praise. I found it incredibly slow-paced and boring. The author uses obscure words completely unnecessarily. There is no climax. There's out-of-place morbidity, and it just feels like a rambling mess. I was also not a fan of how much the book jumped around. Every couple pages, you're following a different storyline. Here's the reason. The reason I'm giving it 2 stars instead of 1 is because there were a couple chapters here and there that were well written. Towards the latter half of the book, the main character starts behaving really stupidly, and it felt like a way to add unnecessary drama. I also feel the last 40 pages did not fit with the rest of the book. They are set far into the future, and it felt like the author's hurried way of wrapping up loose ends. I'm glad this book is over. Honestly, that's a pretty good description of how I feel about this. To give you an idea, it's about a girl that lives in Paris and a boy that lives in Germany during the war, and I don't even know what the point of it is. I'm not going to spend any more time talking about it. I did not like that. Next up, we have May Cause Miracles by Gabrielle Bernstein, a 40-day guidebook of subtle shifts for radical change and unlimited happiness. The concept of this book really isn't bad. I enjoyed the fact that there were 40 days, and each day you basically read a chapter and you have a little activity, whether that's meditating on something or journaling or an affirmation. I ended up rating it 3 out of 5, and that's for a couple reasons. One is that I just feel like it was a little bit hard to kind of fit into my schedule. It was kind of another thing and ended up feeling a little bit like a chore probably about halfway through, and it was a little bit repetitive, so there was a lot of journaling. It was about different topics, but I just feel like I gained a little bit of benefit from it in the beginning and then not as much as the book went on. But even more so than that, I think that the fact that there were so many affirmations is another reason that I rated it 3 out of 5. Affirmations just aren't really my thing. They never really resonated with me. I'm more of someone that would rather meditate or go into the woods and go like forest bathing or do yoga or something. But it wasn't a bad book. There were some good takeaways, but overall, not a favorite. Next up, we have this unbelievably massive book called The Self-Sufficient Life and How to Live It, the classic back to basics guide to going off the grid. If you guys have watched some of my recent videos or even just over the past year, you'll know that this is something I'm pretty passionate about. I want to have a little homestead someday, just like literally everyone around Asheville does. I actually bought this as a gift for Ian for his birthday, I think like 2 years ago at this point. And I just thought, you know what, why don't I read it? And it's kind of, again, one of those books that you don't really read cover to cover, but I did just because I'm that kind of person. But there are some really amazing diagrams and tips in this book. They'll talk about growing your own food, of course, different animals, how to care for those animals, how to make things on your own, whether it's woodworking, bread making, so many different things. So like this is just one example of a super helpful chart in the book. Vegetables, I can't read this backwards, but basically vegetables during different times of the year, when to plant them, when to harvest them. So these 2 pages ultimately show you, if you have a 1 acre plot of land, basically how to divide it and how to use it most efficiently. If you have 5 acres and you want to do farming as like your life, you can, you know, kind of base your design off of this. This is ultimately a really highly rated book. I personally rated it 4 out of 5. I'd say my only complaint is that it can be a little bit overwhelming. I wouldn't necessarily say it's a beginner's guide. My thought is that it would be nice to have a book, and there's probably one out there, but it would be nice to have a book where they just say, look, if you have never done anything like this before, here are the first 5 steps. But this is kind of assuming that you have a little bit more of a background in it and kind of wanting to do it all. Still a lot of great information. I would still recommend this one. It's very chunky too, so really did enjoy that book. Next up, we have The Happiness Project, or Why I Spent a Year Trying to Sing in the Morning, Clean My Closets, Fight Right, Read Aristotle and Generally Have More Fun by Gretchen Rubin. I had pretty high hopes for this book and I really love the concept. Basically, she took an entire year and every month focused on a new thing. So like she said, cleaning her closets. I think that was the book on just decluttering her whole house. Or Fighting Right was basically how to communicate better with her husband. So I'll just read a little bit of my review. I rated it 3 out of 5. And I said, I have conflicting feelings on this book. Gretchen made some good points, shared some interesting scientific evidence, but I didn't find any of the information earth-shattering. The idea of a happiness project is great, but creating resolutions isn't exactly a new idea. I found myself resonating with some of her struggles. I too am overly critical, negative, and complain too much, but I found the emphasis on her own experiences to be a bit boring. I was hoping for more of a roadmap to happiness, whereas this book was simply a log of what was going through her head throughout the year of the happiness project. I also strongly disagree with her choice to act happy for the sake of other people's happiness. It's true that you need to believe you're happy to be happy, but having someone else believe you're happy when you're not is taking it too far. Overall, there were some good points, but this isn't a book I'll be picking up again. I'm still glad I gave it a try, but not a favorite. Next up, we have Yellowstone Has Teeth by Marjane Ambler. This was a really interesting book. It's about someone that lives in Yellowstone over the winter with her husband and basically just explains what that's like. They're there taking care of the park, maintaining the roads. They don't even have vehicles. They get around on snowmobiles, and it's just the story of how rugged of a lifestyle that is in the wintertime. Very interesting. Totally different way of life to live in Yellowstone in the winter time. I did only rate it 3 out of 5 just because I don't feel like I gained any sort of wisdom or anything that I really took away from the book other than that it was just an interesting read to hear about someone's experience. But overall, still an interesting book. Next up, we have Mocha with Max, Friendly Thoughts and Simple Truths from the writing of Max Lucado. This is a little bit more of a religious book as well. I think I got this for my confirmation many years ago, and it's really nice. It's just kind of what you would expect, just something that you would kind of read with a cup of coffee in the morning. There are little quotes and just little life advice for different periods of time. Like I just happened to open up to the anxiety and stress section. Don't spend tomorrow's money today. Worry changes nothing. Also, meet today's problems with today's strength. Don't start tackling tomorrow's problems until tomorrow. You do not have tomorrow's strength yet. You simply have enough for today. There are definitely references in here to the Bible and to God, but it's not like overly religious. I feel like it was just more of an uplifting book and just a quick little read. I think I read maybe like a chapter a day and it was just nice. So 4 out of 5 for this one. All right, we're getting through these. I know this is quite a lot of books to go through, but next up we have This Side of Paradise. Can we just take a moment to acknowledge how beautiful this book is? Like, it's a leather-bound book. It's The Great Gatsby, but there's also 2 other books in here in addition to that, but like gold and just, oh yeah, the back is super cool too. I mean, I just love this book. I actually picked this up at the Battery Park Book Exchange downtown and I just love it. So first book in here is This Side of Paradise. It was a decent book. I feel like with classic books, I'm never like over the moon about them. I'm like, oh, they're fine. Overall, I did only rate it a 2 out of 5. This is making me think I need to go back and change that All the Light We Cannot See review to like 1, because this is better than that for sure. But anyways, I'll leave that one how it is for now. But 2 out of 5 for this one, just because I didn't find it particularly relatable and there wasn't really like a climax to the book, and that's mainly why I only rated it 2 out of 5. It's ultimately about someone named Amory, and I think that his storyline is loosely based off of Fitzgerald's young adulthood and just kind of growing up, making mistakes. It wasn't horrible by any means, but definitely not one that I would read again. Next up, we have Beyond the Pill, a 30-day program to balance your hormones, reclaim your body, and reverse the dangerous side effects of the birth control pill. and this was written by Dr. Jolene Brighton. She is a nutritional biochemist and leading expert in women's medicine. Probably TMI, but I'm not on the pill anymore. I haven't been for many years, but I read this book ultimately to just learn more about hormone health because I know that that's really important as a woman. And she included a lot of really good information in here. This one is easily a 4 out of 5 stars for me. I liked that she includes so much scientific evidence and knowledge just wrapped up in this book. And then at the end, she goes through recommendations for if you do have certain hormonal balances, basically what to do over the course of 30 days to help balance those a little bit more. Now, I will say that after reading this book, I was so inspired to look into my hormones that I did start seeing a naturopathic doctor. And this book pretty much convinced me that my hormone levels were off, that I probably had like high testosterone and all these other things. But weirdly, when I got my hormones tested, that wasn't the case. And so I will say that if you do read this book, don't base all of your decisions off of just like the quizzes in the book. I would definitely say to go and get your hormones tested first. And then once you have your results, then of course consult with your doctor. But then also you could reference this book too for some extra advice for what to do to ultimately balance them. Overall, 4 out of 5, really great information. Very impressed with her credentials too. All right, hang in there, we've only got 2 more. This next one is Nature in America, your A to Z guide to our country's animals, plants, landforms, and other natural features. You guys are probably like, what the heck do you read? Like, did you actually read that front to cover? And yeah, I did. I really did. I honestly just found it refreshing to read something that is so not related to what I do on a day-to-day basis. Every page just has pretty pictures and just like a little paragraph about each thing, and it is separated in like an A to Z guide. Honestly, I learned a lot of things about different plants and animals. They have like a couple little facts on the back. I'll just read you a couple of examples basically of what is in the book. So it says, did you know sharks are constantly on the move, not in pursuit of prey, but to keep themselves from sinking? Also, armadillos always give birth to identical quadruplets. Like just really random stuff. So honestly, I really enjoyed this one too. I would rate it like a 4 out of 5. It was a bit weird to read it from cover to cover. It might be one of those that I'd recommend to just kind of pick up as you kind of feel like learning something interesting. I did alternate reading this with another book. Look at that little guy. Just, yeah, a lot of cute things. Okay, we are down to the last book, which is Shem Creek, A Low Country Tale by Dorothea Benton Frank. This book I started reading in, I think, September when we went to Wilmington. As you can probably tell by the cover, it's a little bit more of like a beachy read. I went into it expecting it to be like a Nicholas Sparks book, but honestly, it was a bit of a letdown. It wasn't poorly written, I will say that. Her writing style was pretty good, but the content was just so boring. There wasn't any sort of plot. It was basically just this divorced wife and her 2 kids that are kind of a mess. They moved to South Carolina, that's where her sister lives, and she moves there to be away from her ex-husband and just basically start a new life. But there wasn't any like main point in the book. I feel like there was overly dramatic stuff that happened that it wasn't really believable. And then I think it was the last 25 or like 30 pages in the book where anything romantic even happened, and at that point it felt so rushed and not even believable. Don't really highly rate this one. I would say 2 out of 5 for this one, unfortunately. Well, that is everything for today's video. I really do hope that you enjoyed it. I'm starting to lose my voice a little bit. I've been talking for so long, but I do hope that you enjoyed this one. Definitely leave me a comment down below and let me know what your favorite book was that you read in 2023, or even just any year. Just what some of your favorite books are, and maybe one that you definitely don't recommend reading. I feel like not a lot of people ask that question, and it might be interesting to hear some advice from you. So I hope that you enjoyed this one. If you did, hit that like button, share this video with your family and friends, and don't forget, if you want to follow my Goodreads, I'll leave that link in the description box below. Subscribe as well if you are not already, and I will see you guys very soon in the next one, which will be in 2024. Happy holidays and happy